If you travel for work, chances are you've thought this before. My days are going to be packed on this trip. Why would I even bother to wake up early and do an extra workout when I'm going to be so exhausted? And unfortunately, this all or nothing mindset is what keeps business travelers stuck in the cycle of starting over every time you get home. So in this video, I'm going to show you a smarter way to approach training when you're constantly flying, you're bouncing between meetings, and living out of hotels. First, I'll show you what it actually looks like on one of my recent trips. Then we'll talk through the real problem that most travelers run into. From there, we're going to talk through some common misconceptions that mess up your routine when you're on the road. And then finally, I'll break down a simple framework you can put into your routine to set yourself up for success no matter where your travels take you. All right, so I want to talk through one of my recent trips, okay? So this is all very practical, that it doesn't matter if you're traveling from Sunday to Thursday, Tuesday to, Wednesday, a one-day trip, like any scenario that you travel on, you can always apply the principles that we're going to talk through in this video, okay? So for one of my trips that I went on, I had to go to Orlando it was Tuesday through Saturday. So I left at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday and I got back relatively late in the day on Saturday. And how I approached it basically was, and that's the framework I'll talk through this video, which is I applied directly on this trip. I basically worked around my schedule instead of the other way around. I wanted to make sure I had a plan in place that accommodates my busy schedule and my travels. So the first thing is we want to look through a 7-day lens anytime we're traveling, a 7-day outlook. And what I mean by that is, so on this trip in particular, like I said, I left at 4 p.m. on Tuesday. So I had Monday and Tuesday to start my 7-day cycle of my workouts. I work out 4 days a week because for me, I can still build muscle, I can still feel athletic, I can still feel sharp, and without sacrificing anything I need to take care of from a productivity standpoint. And so what that looked like was I got my first workout done, business as usual on Monday. Since I was flying out at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, I had to leave for the airport at like 1:30 or 2 o'clock. And so I ended up doing a morning workout. Instead of 60 minutes, I did 45 minutes. Okay, so out of my 4-day split, I did my Monday workout and my Tuesday workout. And like I said, I'm going to be gone from Tuesday to Saturday. So between Tuesday and Saturday, all I have to do is 2 more workouts to keep my same structure. And so what I ended up doing, and you can kind of see on the screen, is I ended up doing 1 workout on Thursday, and then I did 1 on Saturday when I got home. So on the trip itself, and that's kind of the image you can see on the top right here, on the trip itself, I really only did 1 workout. And so because I got back on Saturday, I came home, did my last one. So that's basically the structure we're going to follow, is make sure you have a routine that accommodates your specific type of travel, your specific lifestyle, because the last thing we want to do is have something that's just going to overburden you and that you won't be able to stick to, because at the end of the day, sustainability is what's going to keep you on your game in the long term, okay? Now, I want to talk through what is one of the common problems that we hear when it comes to actually staying with your fitness goals on the road. So there's a big issue when we think, the road destroys our consistency, not because the workouts are impossible or it's just we're too busy. It's truly because our expectations are wrong. And we tend to fall into this all or nothing trap, which is, man, if I can't keep the same routine as I have at home, then why would I even bother when I'm on the road? And that all starts with the planning. So if you try to overcommit to, let's say, like a 5 or 6 day routine because of something you found on YouTube or on, from a trainer that you follow that you trust, that's going to be setting you up for failure for your lifestyle. That's not sustainable if you have frequent trips and you want to actually stay on your game. And the rule of thumb, if you're flying every week or every other week, with a busy schedule for frequent travelers, a 3-day split honestly is my preferred approach for my clients that travel a lot, and just in general to stick to consistency. Typically no more than a 4-day split. Like I said, I do a 4-day split and it works perfect for me because I can still maintain my routine without sacrificing my fitness goals. So we want to make sure that we set up our expectations properly so that we're not going to be failing from the get-go. Now, there's a very common myth, okay? And that's kind of what I mentioned in the intro, which is my days are so busy. Why would I take the extra time when I'm already so exhausted? And what's really overlooked is kind of what I said earlier, is we're not really approaching it from a rolling 7 to 10 day cycle, which is what works far better for someone who is on planes for half the month. And so when you look at it from a 7-day outlook, then you realize, okay, my travel days are from here to here. You know, let's just use the example of Sunday through Thursday. That's a really common one, you know, especially for consultants. If you're a consultant, you'll know what I'm talking about. And when we actually approach it in this way, then we say, okay, we plan ahead of time to make sure we have the right plan in place. And then based on the days we're going to accommodate the workouts around that. Okay. So it's not that our days are busy. It's that we want to make sure we know exactly what we're doing ahead of time so that we don't overcommit. And when it comes to, you know, why would I even wake up on these trips? Why would I spend the extra time to train? You know, there's a mental reframe, and I have a separate video on this altogether, but it comes from the state of mind that we're approaching this from. We're coming to this conversation from a point of, you know, my trainer told me to do this, or, you know, I feel like I have to just push myself through this discomfort just for the sake of everyone saying, you know, it's what you're supposed to do to stay healthy. And that's not the right approach, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, we want to look at what are our outcomes. And for high performers and frequent travelers, you know, in your professions, whether you're a sales professional, whether you're a flight attendant, whether you're a traveling nurse, whether you're a consultant, an executive at, you know, at a major company, whatever it is, we have to make sure that you look at the outcomes. And what do I mean by that? To perform at your best, you need to do a few things. You need to minimize brain fog. You need to make sure you don't have midday crashes. You need to make sure you don't just have either a midday or, you know, a late night binge, so that you can actually be alert and be on your best when it comes to your social energy, when it comes to your mental capability. Like, those are the things that really matter when you have to perform. Like, let's say you have a big presentation coming up. You know, obviously you're not going to want to fuel yourself with the wrong food, because that's going to lead to worse performance. And so when it comes to those outcomes, you know, why would I spend 15 minutes walking on an incline on the treadmill in the morning? Or why would I do a mobility routine in my hotel room? You know, that's kind of one of the images I had early on, is even on my trip, like I said, I only worked out one day on the trip, and I still hit my 4 days in that 7-day cycle. But that doesn't mean I completely give up my habits. Like, I did a 5-minute mobility routine every morning in the room. I literally just put a towel down and I was able to knock it out. And, you know, I'll talk through the nutrition and everything separately. But point being is, waking up, you know, on 1 or 2 days, doing some mobility, it's going to help with things like relieving our back pain. So you don't have to be focusing on that pain when you're in a meeting, and you can actually be alert and present. Or making sure you're being mindful about the food you're eating, so that you don't have to be distracted from, you know, trying to over caffeinate and just because you feel like you're going to crash. Like, those kinds of things are what we want to focus on. And I want to make a quick note real quick, which is, even though I only did technically one workout on the trip, that doesn't mean I disregarded my other habits. Like I just said, I did mobility every single morning because I like to not feel stiff at the end of the day. Like, I want to just feel loose and not have to worry about my body feeling all stiff when I'm, you know, sitting down or having to position myself a certain way. On top of that, nutrition. Okay, so it's a 3-legged stool when it comes to staying on your health game. There's the there's the training, the nutrition, the accountability. So even if you're not training every day, that's only 33% of the puzzle, right? There's still the nutrition piece and keeping yourself accountable to make sure you're not completely falling off. And so that's what I was showing in some of these photos is, you know, I'd pick up some protein snacks, or in the morning, I got a protein shake and an espresso. I made a protein mocha instead of, you know, having like a frappuccino or something like that, or having sweets at the hotel breakfast. So it's those little things that compound, and these don't take that long. This mobility routine, I think it took 3 to 5 minutes. Going to the gas station, because I had a rental car on this trip, it took 2 minutes out of my way to knock out 40 grams of protein, I caffeinated like I normally would, picked up some protein snacks. We got catered lunch that day, and instead of having the Lay's they offered, I literally just ate my Quest protein chips. Then I had a protein bar and some beef jerky. So things like that are super easy. Now, that takes us to, okay, what is the actual framework we want to use? And this is going to be it's going to be dependent on your own specific trip. So I want to make sure that we approach it the right way, okay? So the first thing we want to do is you have to identify what your specific goals are. Everyone's goals are going to be different, okay? For some people, they travel a lot and they're just so tired of being fatigued, okay? And for me, personally, energy maintenance is what's most important. I hate when I have the midday crash and all I can think about is like, oh my gosh, when can I go and just close my eyes for a few minutes? I can take 6 or 7 minute naps. Like when my body tells me to sleep, I can knock out easily. But what's your objective? Do you want to have more energy? Do you want to just feel more confident when you're presenting and fit better in your clothes so that you just feel better when you're in that, state of mind? Do you want to lose weight? Like what are your end objectives? Okay. So when it comes to actually staying on track, you have to understand your why. Nothing is going to come out of it if you don't understand your why. And so that's the first thing we want to do before we set up any sort of routine for your lifestyle. You need to identify your goals. Okay. So number 2 is going to be based on those goals. You need to have a game plan ready going into the trip. Okay. So before your next trip, based on what you want to actually achieve, we want to make sure we have a structure in place. So what are the actions we're going to take to help us get there? Now, let's say you want to have less fatigue in the middle of the day. That's going to need a plan that is very mindful around nutrition and consistent movement throughout the day. Okay. So, and like I said, this will probably require a 3-day-a-week routine with mindfulness on nutrition. And I'll have a full breakdown of how we approach the nutrition in a separate video, even though I've given some nuggets here. But yeah, we want to make sure we have the game plan ready. Number 3 is we want to pre-plan based on your trip. So I use the example of a Sunday to a Thursday. In my recent trip, like I said, it was Tuesday to Saturday. What I did was I pre-planned. So I worked out Monday, I worked out Tuesday, knocked out half my week's workouts, worked out once on Thursday, worked out once on Saturday. What that did is it set my expectations the right way, okay? So identify goals, have that game plan in place, pre-plan and set your routine ahead of time, make it a non-negotiable. And then the 4th thing is repeat. Every single trip, you replan based on what those specific days are, because not every single week is going to be the same. And I want to make this very clear. We want to start small, okay? If this is new to you, you don't want to go straight into a 3-day routine that's going to start you at an hour a day workouts. I love that because it's a mental reset and I can actually separate my work from, the rest of my headspace. But if this is new to you, you need to start small. And for a lot of my entrepreneurial clients, a lot of my, frequent traveling clients, I start them off at like 20-25 minutes. And that's super doable because it doesn't take away from your routine. You don't have to wake up that much earlier. And it just helps overall to keep it sustainable, okay? And I want to give a quick story about why sustainability is so important. So if you think about a farmer, a farmer doesn't plant seeds every single day in the same plot of land. If they did, the soil is just going to burn out and it's not going to yield any crops, right? Instead, what the farmer does is they rotate the crops, they let the fields rest, and then they time their planting so that the growth, it actually compounds over the course of the season. And your workouts and your habits are essentially the same way. You need to kind of think about, planting those seeds as your training sessions. If you train every single day and have false expectations, you're going to burn out. But if you cycle it, you have one before your trip, one during, and one after, and then you do a 5-minute mobility on the trip. You make sure you're hydrated. You make sure you pick up a protein snack or pack a protein snack ahead of time. That way, your soil, the equivalent of the farmer's soil, aka your body, it's going to stay fertile and it's going to actually help you grow in the long term and stay sustainable. So your body's kind of like that field, right? You don't want to overplant. You want to work the cycle, the season, and then you'll harvest the results. I just want to mention, if you do want a routine done for you with guided support every single day to prove this actually works, I work with business travelers all the time. That's my primary clientele. And, just hit the link in the description. I'll set up a free customized plan, for the first week to show you that this actually works. And it doesn't take more than a week to have that reset mentally, physically, and to really reset your energy to build that momentum to then carry it forward for the rest of the year. And there's so much that can be done in a week. So if that sounds like it would interest you, just hit the link in the description. So if you got some value out of this, you'll want to check out the next video, and I'll see you in the next one.